Have you ever wondered about the silence? In the grand narrative of the Bible, it is perhaps the most profound mystery of all. We meet Jesus as an infant in a manger. We see him as a brilliant 12-year-old, astonishing the wisest teachers in the Jerusalem temple. And then, nothing. For 18 years, the Gospels fall completely silent. The curtain drops on the divine stage, and the main character vanishes from the story. He reappears almost 2 decades later as a man, walking to the Jordan River to be baptized, ready to begin a ministry that would shatter history. But where was he? What happened during those 18 silent years, from age 12 to 30? Did he, as some believe, simply live a quiet life in Nazareth, honing his craft as a carpenter? Or, as others whisper, did he travel to distant lands, learning from the great mystics of the East in India and Tibet? Could he have journeyed to the misty shores of Britain, or withdrawn into the desert to study with the secretive Essene community? For centuries, this gap in the record has haunted scholars, mystics, and believers alike. It's a blank page in the most important story ever told, and humanity has rushed to fill it with theories, legends, and gospels of its own. Why is this time missing? Was it deliberately hidden, a secret so profound the world wasn't ready to know? Or is the silence itself the message? Today, we investigate the greatest biographical mystery in history. We will ask the questions you've always wondered about and seek the answers buried in history, legend, and faith. We will journey through the possibilities and uncover what we can truly know about the missing years of Jesus. Welcome to Bible Mysteries Revealed. Be sure to like, subscribe, and click the bell icon, because the journey into this great silence will challenge everything you thought you knew. To understand the mystery, we must first establish what we actually know. The historical record is incredibly sparse. The Gospel of Luke gives us our last glimpse of the young Jesus. At age 12, his family travels to Jerusalem for Passover. On the journey home, they realize he is missing, and after a frantic 3-day search, they find him in the temple, sitting among the teachers, listening to them and asking them questions. When his mother Mary scolds him, he replies with the haunting words, "Did you not know that I must be in my Father's house?" This is the last recorded event. The very next verse is a summary of the entire 18-year period. And Jesus increased in wisdom and in stature and in favor with God and man. And that's it. That one sentence is all the Bible gives us. From this, we can deduce the most common, and historically, the most likely scenario, that Jesus remained in Nazareth. He returned home with his parents and lived the life of a first-century Galilean Jew. Mark's Gospel tells us the people of Nazareth later knew him as the carpenter, the son of Mary. The Greek word used is tekton. This doesn't just mean a woodworker, it means a craftsman, a builder, someone who worked with wood, stone, and metal. This was a life of hard, physical labor under a Galilean sun. It was not a quiet, contemplative existence. It was demanding. He would have been part of the local economy, a respected member of a small-town community. His education would have been standard for a Jewish boy of that era. He would have studied the Torah, the prophets, and the writings at the local synagogue. He would have memorized vast portions of the Hebrew scriptures, debating their meaning with others. His mind, which astonished the teachers in Jerusalem, would have continued to deepen in his understanding of the scriptures that he believed pointed directly to him. This Nazareth theory suggests there are no missing years at all. He was simply living a life of faithful obscurity, a life of prayer, work, and study, preparing for the moment his public ministry would begin. This view argues that his wisdom didn't come from a secret school in Alexandria or a monastery in the Himalayas. It came from a deep personal communion with God, the Father, nurtured in the quiet rhythm of a normal life. It suggests that the Creator of the universe sanctified the ordinary, the mundane, the daily grind of human existence by living it himself. But for many, this answer, while plausible, feels incomplete. Could a man who would change the world have truly done nothing remarkable for 2/3 of his life? This question has opened the door to far more mysterious possibilities. One of the most compelling theories takes us into the stark, sun-scorched desert of Judea, to the community of the Essenes. The Essenes were a mystical and ascetic Jewish sect that existed during the time of Jesus. They had withdrawn from what they saw as the corrupt temple worship in Jerusalem and lived in monastic communities, the most famous of which was Qumran, where the Dead Sea Scrolls were discovered. These scrolls revealed a community obsessed with ritual purity, righteousness, and the imminent arrival of a Messiah, or perhaps two Messiahs. They practiced baptism as a form of spiritual cleansing and shared communal meals. Does any of that sound familiar? The parallels to the later Christian movement are striking. John the Baptist, Jesus' cousin, lived in the desert, preached a message of repentance and baptism, and fits the description of an Essene ascetic almost perfectly. Is it possible that Jesus, during his silent years, sought out these devout purists? Did he go to the desert to study at their feet, to learn from their deep scriptural knowledge and disciplined way of life? Proponents of this theory point to the shared themes: a focus on righteousness over ritual, a critique of the temple establishment, and a powerful apocalyptic expectation. It seems plausible that Jesus would have been drawn to a group so fervently dedicated to God. However, there are also major differences. The Essenes were highly exclusive, separating themselves from the sons of darkness, which included Gentiles and even other Jews. Jesus, by contrast, was radically inclusive. He ate with tax collectors and sinners, touched lepers, and reached out to the marginalized. The Essenes had a rigid, hierarchical structure and a complex set of secret rules. Jesus preached a message of radical freedom and simplicity. So, while he may have encountered Essenes or been influenced by their ideas, which were prevalent in Judea, it's unlikely he was a formal member. He was, in the end, a movement of one. But what if his journey took him much, much farther than the Judean desert? Perhaps the most sensational and controversial theory about Jesus' missing years is that he traveled east, along the Silk Road, to India, Nepal, and Tibet. This idea exploded into the Western world in 1894 with the publication of a book by a Russian journalist named Nicholas Notovich. Notovich claimed that while recovering from an injury in a Tibetan monastery, the monks showed him an ancient manuscript describing the life of a saint named Isa, the name for Jesus in Arabic. According to this text, at age 13, the young Isa left his home in Israel and traveled with merchant caravans to India. There, he spent 6 years studying with the Brahmins, learning the Vedas, but he ultimately rejected the caste system and began teaching the lower castes, the Sudras. This angered the Brahmins, who plotted against him. Isa then fled to the Himalayas, spending years studying Buddhist philosophy in Tibetan monasteries before returning to Israel at age 29, his mind enriched with the wisdom of the East. This story is incredibly tantalizing. It suggests a Jesus who was a master of comparative religion, a universal sage who blended the monotheism of Israel with the mystical insights of Hinduism and Buddhism. Believers in this theory point to the parallels between Jesus' teachings and Eastern philosophy, such as the focus on non-violence, inner purity, and detachment from worldly goods. The problem? There is almost no credible evidence to support it. Scholars who later visited the same monastery Notovich named found no such manuscript and reported that the monks had never heard of him or the story. The consensus among historians is that the life of Saint Isa was likely a 19th century fabrication. And while there are surface-level similarities in the teachings, the core theology is fundamentally different. Jesus' message was rooted in the intensely personal, covenantal God of the Hebrew Scriptures, a framework vastly different from the impersonal concepts of Brahman or the non-theistic path of Buddhism. From the Far East, another, even more localized legend takes us to the Far West, to the green shores of ancient Britain. This story, popular in British folklore, claims that Jesus accompanied his great-uncle, Joseph of Arimathea, on trading voyages. Joseph was said to be a wealthy tin merchant who made frequent trips to the tin mines of Cornwall and Somerset. The legend suggests that a young Jesus traveled with him, perhaps even studying with the Celtic Druids at Glastonbury. This story is the source of the famous line in William Blake's poem, "And did those feet in ancient time walk upon England's mountains green?" Like the journey to India, there is no historical or biblical evidence for this. It appears to be a medieval legend, likely created to boost the prestige of Glastonbury Abbey and establish a direct, ancient link between Britain and Jesus himself. It's a powerful piece of folklore, but it remains just that. A story born from a desire to connect one's own land and history to the central figure of faith. After exploring these theories, the quiet carpenter, the desert ascetic, the Eastern sage, the Western traveler, we are left with a landscape of possibilities but very little certainty. We are left with the silence. And maybe, after all this searching, we have been asking the wrong question. Maybe the question isn't, where did Jesus go? But rather, why did the gospel writers leave these years out? The answer may be the most profound revelation of all. The Gospels were never meant to be modern biographies detailing every year of a person's life from birth to death. They are theological proclamations. Their purpose is not to tell us everything Jesus did, but to tell us who he is and what his public ministry, death, and resurrection mean for humanity. The silence of the 18 years powerfully emphasizes this point. It tells us that Jesus' authority did not come from a secret school, a hidden master, or a distant land. He didn't need a diploma from an Indian Brahmin or a certificate from a desert sect. His wisdom and authority came directly from his identity as the Son of God. The Gospel writers skip from the boy in the temple to the man at the Jordan because, for their theological purpose, nothing that happened in between was as important as the ministry that was about to begin. The silence is a literary and theological device that brackets off his private life, focusing our attention entirely on his public work of salvation. The missing years were not missing to God. They were years of preparation, of growth, of perfect, quiet obedience. He learned what it meant to be human, to feel exhaustion, to have calloused hands, to be part of a family and a community, so that he could one day redeem humanity. So, what does this great silence mean for us today? It invites us to stop seeking a secret Jesus, a hidden gospel that will unlock some new truth. It directs us back to the years that are not missing. It tells us to focus on the Sermon on the Mount, the parables, the miracles, the cross, and the empty tomb. The truth of who Jesus is was not hidden in a Tibetan monastery. It was revealed openly on a hill outside Jerusalem. The silence isn't a void to be filled with our own speculation. It is a space for reverence, a quiet testament to a life lived in faithful obscurity before the moment came to change the world forever. Thank you for journeying with us into this profound mystery. The comfortable images are easy to accept, but the truth, while challenging, is where true awe is found. This is Bible Mysteries Revealed. If you want to uncover more truths hidden within the scriptures, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell. Until our next revelation, keep seeking.